real quick. They were not plugged in.
Oh, no worries.
All right, that should be better.
Sweet. Sounds good.
Hey, nice,
Um,
man.
good. I really appreciate you jumping on.
Absolutely.
Yeah, no, I was stoked. I've been listening to some of I know you've been on a media tear. Been listening to some, and it's all been
Oh
good
man,
stuff.
it's been crazy, and I've not reached out to one like source at all too. So it's just been continually coming at me.
Well, I'm not surprised. You got a powerful story, so I'm not surprised
Man,
people are
yeah.
attracted to it.
So
Uh,
where are you coming from?
I'm in Cambridge, Mass.
Okay,
Yeah,
awesome.
so I'm a New Englander. I'm from Connecticut, was in Vermont for a while, and now I'm down here.
Love it. I've only
Yeah.
been to. I was just in Boston last week, just on my way home from Scotland, but that's my only time I've really been in Massachusetts.
Yeah, mostly, well, I know Virginia a little bit, but mostly Midwest.
Yeah, I went to college in Virginia. My wife's from Virginia. And yeah, I'm from Indiana, born and raised. Lived in Texas for a little bit. Lived in India for a short stint. So I've been around. Lived in California last season.
Right on. And I know you're Indianapolis, right? Are you a Pacers guy?
Oh, huge Pacers guy. My heart's broken, man.
That was an incredible run though.
It was. I feel so bad for Hallie.
Yeah. Oh my God. I mean,
And did you see Miles Turner just got sent away today too?
I did not. I
Yeah,
did
so
not see that.
he just signed like a 3 or 4 year deal with the Bucks.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, no, the Achilles stuff is tough. I mean, few stars now. I mean, KD, Tatum this year, and yeah, Allen, that's tough.
I don't remember many Achilles injuries happening in the NBA previously. Like
I
it's been
know.
like a recent thing. I know they're doing an investigation now to see why there's more. But I mean, players in the 80s were playing the Chuck Taylors and were never having
I
Achilles,
It is crazy how much goes into the sports science and performance, and it just seems to almost not be as effective. But maybe they're playing more, honestly. It might just
Yeah,
be playing more.
yeah.
Um, so I can run us through really quickly just some of the questions, just generally. And if there's anything you don't want to talk about, I can cut it out.
Yeah, no, that's
Um,
great. I have a little bit of a chest cold, so I apologize any of
oh,
the coughing or phlegm or anything.
no problem at all. Um, So I was hoping to cover just a little bit of childhood, growing up, just to get a little bit of background, touch on your football career, a little bit at Liberty, and then obviously the main chunk is going to be about your current journey with the 2026 World Cup. A lot of questions about that, and then I was hoping to touch a little bit on um, the role of faith in your journey. And I'm sorry if I keep looking up. I just have my notes right above my
Oh no,
screen.
you're fine. You're fine.
And then next steps in your soccer journey, and then a little just bit about life philosophy at the end. I always like to touch on that with my guests. So if any of that is something you don't want to talk about, totally fine, but that's what I have planned.
That's all great with me.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah.
And if at any time you're pinched for time, we need to cut it. Whenever you need to jump is totally fine.
I should be good on the time you have scheduled. Definitely a hard stop at 5, but I'm
Okay,
good up until then.
great, awesome. Um, Sweet. Well, can we hop right into it?
Let's hop in.
Let's do it. Today's guest is someone excuse me, let me restart really quick. Today's guest is someone who chose courage when comfort was easier. He is a husband, a father, and a servant leader who decided to chase one of the most audacious public goals imaginable, making the U.S. men's national team for the 2026 World Cup without ever having played the game. But what stands out most isn't the goal. It's the way Zach shows up for it. Through relentless discipline, faith, and a radical commitment to becoming who he's meant to be, Zach is living proof that we are not defined by where we start or how others see us, but by what we choose to do every single day. Welcome, Zach, to the Walk On Way.
Hey man, thank you so much for having me. Really excited to be with you, Tucker.
Of course. Well, yeah, thank you again for joining. I know we caught up a little bit before this, but I was hoping to get a little bit more info on your background, your childhood. So could you tell me a little bit about your childhood, growing up in Indiana, I believe,
Yep, yep.
and include, if you're willing, whatever formative moments you're willing to share.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, when I look back on my childhood, I'm just very, very grateful. I mean, not only incredible mom and dad, brothers and sisters, but I was also surrounded by both sets of grandparents, aunts and uncles, because our families, we've lived on the same family farm in Indiana since the Revolutionary War. So we've been here a long time, and my family's been farmers on both sides of the family ever since. And so I absolutely loved growing up on the farm. We raise cattle, we have corn, we have soybeans, and so from a young age, my mom and dad, they just taught me that, very Hoosier farm boy work ethic. And I was outside all day, every day, playing in the creeks, riding my bikes, helping with the cows, and so that was just life growing up. And my mom and dad, they're incredible, even just believers, followers of Jesus. And so from a young age, they even were raising me in Christian faith and learning to hear and obey Jesus. And that was a huge foundational, just part of my life too, that really shaped everything in my childhood. And my dad's a huge sports fan. He's a big IU guy, big Colts guy, big Pacers guy. So sports were always big in our home. Some of my fondest memories were going to IU basketball games with my dad back in the 90s, and just some really formative times. And as any childhood, nothing was ever perfect, but I am just very thankful for a very grounded, solid, loving, supportive family that I know not everybody gets the chance to have. And so I don't take that for granted, especially now more than ever. When you're young, you don't know any better. And so I definitely took it for granted when I was younger. But now looking back, just the utmost respect for my parents and how they raised us. And now with 5 kids of my own, I'm hoping to really imitate so much of what they did. So yeah, that was my younger years. I have an identical twin brother too, and so I always had a
Wow.
built-in friend, built-in playmate, someone that I was able to do life with from the beginning. He's an incredible guy, dad, husband, and so yeah, just really thankful for my family.
I didn't know that about your twin. Is he also an athletic type, similar?
Yeah, I mean we're identical twins, and so like especially when we were younger, we were so similar. So he was equal in athleticism, and skill. We varied. Like we played football. He was the quarterback. I was the wide receiver. So he grew in his quarterback skills. I grew in my receiver skills. In basketball, he was always the point guard. I was always the shooting guard. But incredible athlete. He even got to play for a Scottish team where they won the whole UK Cup back in college, and so he's a great athlete himself.
Wow. Well, that's awesome to hear. And you just started to touch on some of your football journey with your brother. Could you talk a little bit about that? You mentioned how your dad was a big basketball guy, a big football guy. When did you start playing American football? We're talking about.
Yeah,
When
I
did you start?
started I started playing in second grade. So I mean, as young as you could, and we played against fourth graders, which the second to fourth grade jump and body size is vast then. So like I felt like I was playing with my whole football career now until college. That's when it felt like the scariest to me was when I was going up against those fourth graders as a second grader. And what's really funny is in second grade, maybe it was third grade or second year, we were deciding who was going to be the quarterback and who was going to be, I think, like the running back or receiver on that team. And here's how my dad decided who it would be. Anyone who played football would know this growing up, but it was when you would boil your mouthpieces and get it fitted for your mouth, for your teeth. And I always hated that because we'd put these things in boiling hot water. And then my dad would say we'd have to chomp down on them to mold it to our teeth. It burned like so bad. And this is how we decided who would play quarterback. He would say, all right, with your mouthpiece in, whoever can have the best and loudest and clearest cadence will get to be the quarterback. And so apparently my cadence was more mumbly and my brother's was better. So that's how we decided to get to quarterback receiver. And we kind of just stuck with those roles then. But yeah, I loved football from that moment. And my brother and I were both very good from young ages, and was a huge part of our life.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I didn't grow up playing football, so that's interesting, but makes sense with you need to communicate. You're the leader, so with the mouthpiece in, that's funny. And then you played in high school together, I imagine. And can you talk to me a little bit about that time in high school and then making the jump to
Yeah,
college?
absolutely. So our high school, if anyone wants to look them up, they're It's the Center Grove Trojans, one of the best football programs in the country. They've been nationally ranked for probably the last decade, off and on. Just an incredible program, and that's because of our head coach who's been there since the late '90s, Coach Eric Moore. He built an incredible program from literally the little leagues up until high school, where they're running the same offense, the same program, speed and conditioning. So he's known nationally for just building world-class athletes. And so honestly, I just lucked out coming into a football program that the lower leagues, middle school, high school, I mean, we were getting up at 5 a.m. every day in the summer training with the entire team. They kicked our butts. I mean, so we didn't have the typical high school where we got to, take summers off. I mean, we're up 5 a.m. every morning, running miles, running sprints, doing speed and agility, practicing football. And so the amount of hours that we put in middle school and high school was just absolutely crazy. And so, yeah, middle school, I played defensive back and receiver. And then in high school, I just exclusively played receiver for varsity. And yeah, it was fun. We were a good team. Really, the best years of our team came after we were gone, unfortunately. But on my team in high school, two of us ended up playing Division One. One was our kicker, an incredible kicker, went and played for Ball State, and then the other was me, who played at Liberty University. Since that time, they probably have like 10 people every year that are playing Division One. It's just a powerhouse program. So thankful for Coach Moore. So thankful for our strength and conditioning coach, Marty Mills, who is an Olympic weightlifter and just has a superb program. So with those guys and all the coaches, like I can tell you right now, I would not be the athlete I am if it wasn't for that football program. They molded and shaped my body, my mind, my work ethic, and I owe so much to who I am as an athlete to them in the high school program.
Incredible. And so Coach Moore and Coach Mills kind of instilled in you some of that work ethic, which obviously we're seeing now, I imagine. And then could you take me into Liberty a little bit? Obviously, I believe you started off at Anderson. Is that right?
Yes. I started off on Anderson. I played 2 football seasons there. They're a smaller Division III school here in Indiana. And honestly, I didn't even know if I was going to play football when I went there. I chose Anderson because they had a really incredible business school. And so I went there and I was studying marketing and was double majoring in Christian ministries and loved playing football there. Just like I ended up, I just had to play. I couldn't be there and not play. So I and started as a freshman, did really well both freshman and sophomore years. And after that, this is a whole nother side story, but by divine intervention, I just got this call to go to Liberty. And so long story short, I literally withdrew from Anderson, got my transcript, and drove to Liberty. They didn't know I was coming. I wasn't enrolled. I was just taking this monster risk, which is a huge part of my story. Is I've taken so many risks in my life that have given me faith to take bigger and bigger risks. This was one of them. And so I showed up on campus at Liberty. Didn't know where to go, didn't know who to talk to, didn't know if I would get rejected. And I'm just sitting in the parking lot and this lady sees me and she asked me what's going on, and because she could tell I looked clearly confused. And she said, "Hey, come with me." And so she takes me into this office. We go to the registrar office. I'm like, okay, this is the right place to be, for a new student. And then she bypasses the counter and goes to the executive offices. I'm like, okay, this is crazy. And then she walks me straight to the dean of the registrar's office. I'm like, this is exactly who I need to talk to. And then she sits down in the chair. She was the dean. The very first person I met on campus was the dean of the registrar. She sits me in. I just tell her my story. And I hand her my transcripts, just like hoping that she'll help me. And she's like, you know what? I'm going to enroll you into the school. What would you like to study? And I tell her, and I said, honestly, like, I think just missions, because whatever I do, I want it to be focused on the Lord, whether it's business or or anything sports. Like I want this to be the focus. So I guess mission. So she enrolled me in my classes. She got me housing. Long story short, I was a student by the end of the day. Just crazy story. And again, even at Liberty, I wasn't planning on playing football. I mean, this was a massive leap of faith, leaving my family, leaving my state. I hadn't ever been away from my brother for more than 3 days ever at a time. And so this was a big deal for me as just a young adult at that time. And so I'm like, I'm just going to focus on school. I'm going to focus on this mission. But within a week, my roommate was just like, "Hey, you played football at your last college, right?" I'm like, "Yeah." It's like, you should email the team and see if you can walk on. I'm like, man, I don't want to. I think that chapter's done for me. And then as more I thought about it, I'm like, I really want to play. So I emailed the head coach at like 11 p.m. one night, and I get an email back 7 minutes later. And he said, "Hey, we've already had our walk-on tryouts, but I like the stats that you sent me. We'll give you a shot. I'll hook you up with our receivers coach, and we'll take a look at you. Come be here Friday at 4 p.m." So I'm like, that's all I needed. That's the door. That's the entryway I needed. So I show up there, and this coach, you could tell, he was very kind, amazing guy, but you could tell he was just doing the head coach a favor, showing up for this kid. I don't think he had any intention on seriously looking at me. But in a short period of time after I ran some routes, after we talked it through different defensive coverages and what a receiver would do, and he saw me, he's just like, I want you with the team. And so that's how I got on the team, which was crazy. And that coach now, that receiver coach, is still one of my dearest friends. Is a mentor in my life. He's just an incredible man that I look up to. And neither one of us would have known that moment would have been, the beginning of a great relationship. And so yeah, I walked on to the team, and ended up being there for 2 seasons, and was just an incredible experience.
Amazing. Amazing. Yeah. I mean, just what you've covered so far, because I want to jump into the World Cup goal, but a grounded childhood, an athletic background, a proclivity for taking strong risks early on. And I think kind of all of that story builds really well into the journey you're on now, which is again to make it to the 2026 World Cup with the U.S. men's national team. And I was just hoping, I know you've said this, throughout all your media appearances, but if you could just kind of restate that goal and how it came to be in that coffee shop in Virginia. And it's an incredible story, so I'd love to just hear your take on it again.
Yeah, absolutely. And shout out to the Doppio Bunny coffee shop. That's where it was in the Plains, Virginia. If anyone gets a chance to go there, highly recommend it. Great coffee, good quiet spot. So that's where it was. And we go out to my in-laws in Northern Virginia a few times a year. So this is one of those times. We were there for Christmas. And I go to this coffee shop, and I just went there. I'm like, I need to go journal. I need to go pray. I need to listen to podcasts, because like I'm just done. Like I'm at my lowest. I feel like I'm really failing as a husband and a father. And on paper everything was fine. Like work was fine, family was fine. There was nothing wrong, but just what I knew I was supposed to be, what I knew that I'm capable of, what I know I'm called to do. I felt like I was drifting. I was dying inside, and I had fallen so short of what I know I was called to be, and that just was crushing me. It was a really crushing weight. And so I'm sitting there listening to this podcast of it was called Dad Work. I love the mantra. It says like equipped to lead, easy to love, hard to kill. Like that's the type of, like any man, like, oh, yeah, I want to be that. And so I'm listening to the podcast, and it's specifically talking about dads that have lost their edge, or they've lost their fire. And he's just like, why have we, even specifically in America, accepted the status quo of the dad bod, accepted the status quo of just coasting and barely managing through life? And why don't we question the way that things are? Why don't we push ourselves to the edge and the limits and find out what we're actually capable of, so that we live with no regrets? And as I'm sitting there, I'm just like, man, I'm not pushing myself to the edge. And if I project myself 50 years from now looking back, I would have massive regrets. I'm burying my talents in the sand because I'm afraid. I'm afraid if I fail. I'm afraid of what other people might say about me. I'm afraid, just keep the list going on. It's like living in a self-protective shell that it was just easier to play it safe. I just reached the point where it's like, I can't play it safe any longer. I have to grab the bat and I have to swing for the fence. Even if I fail miserably, I would rather be in the arena and try. And so as I'm sitting there, like I'm just overwhelmed. And what really hit me, this now or never moment, was if I get up from this chair after this really strong appeal on this podcast, knowing that I need to change and don't, there's nothing that's ever going to be strong enough to get me to change. If I don't make a massive change right now. And so I was face to face with this now or never moment. And so I just prayed. I just said, Lord, don't let me move from this chair until you bring that fire in my heart and show me what that's supposed to be. And I have a daily practice of just doing listening prayer. A lot of people, they just like to talk to God, but that's never a good relationship with anybody. Like when you're in a relationship, you want to talk and listen. So I like to spend more time listening than I do talking. And so I just asked him, like, what do you want me to do? Like, what is that's going to cause me to be the man that you've called me to be? And never in a million years, and that might not be an exaggeration, would I ever guessed he would have put soccer on my heart, ever. It wasn't on my heart when I walked in through that coffee shop. I had not thought about it previously. It just wasn't there. And so when that hit me, it was like a lightning bolt. And for whatever reason, something in me came alive. And then I began thinking, okay, like, yeah, I would love to push myself and train in soccer. I can see how this would bring my mental clarity back, my habits back, my eating back, my sleeping back. And as I started thinking about it, I'm like, but I'm not going to push myself to the limits, these limits I was just hearing about, unless I set something so crazy, so audacious, so impossible that it would make other people laugh. Like I needed that goal that was so crazy, so impossible that it would scare the mess out of me. And so that's why I'm like, okay, I'm going to shoot for the most crazy goal possible, making the World Cup in 2026. and and any goal in any industry, if you set yourself 10 years to accomplish the goal, most likely it will take you 10 years. If you take that 10 years and say, I want to accomplish that same thing in 2 years, you can do it. If you're absolutely nuts and say that thing in 10 years, I want to accomplish it in 6 months, you will figure out a way to do it. And so if I compress this time and space, this goal to make the World Cup and to do this whole journey in 4 years, I knew I would push myself like an absolute maniac, like no other goal could push me. And it ended up being true. I mean, I to this day, my habits, my training, my sleeping, my nutrition, my time management, everything has gone through the roof. So for me, from moment number one, it was a victory. Moment number one, because I can't fail. So what if I don't make it? So what if people laugh at me? So what if other things don't work out? The man that I've become, the only people I care about the change in my life, my wife and my kids and myself. If they are pumped about the man that I am, I won. And they are the biggest advocates of like, don't stop, keep going. We love the dad, husband, father that you're becoming. So that's a long answer to your question, but that's really the genesis moment of how it came about, and really more of the motives underlying why it came about.
Incredible. Well, thank you for sharing that
Yep.
again. I know you've been asked to tell that numerous times, so I appreciate you taking the time to do it again.
Yeah, absolutely.
Specifically, when you're in that chair, and I believe on other podcasts you described it as, don't let me leave this chair until God is giving you that fire again. And can you you described it a little bit, but could you describe what that felt like? Because just for context, as I'm someone who's not religious, so I sometimes have a hard time wrapping my head around these things, like the divine intervention, or so I'm just curious how it felt.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, there's only been probably three moments in my life where something was this clear. But even before that, I'll back up because I think it's really easy to make it more complicated than it is. Um, you know, we get thoughts in our head a lot of times that are, really bad thoughts, evil thoughts. And, from my perspective, faith point of view, I'm like, I don't want to think that. That's not my thought. That thought was planted there. And so I would accredit that to the enemy, the devil's trying to tempt me. He's putting thoughts in my head, and most people would realize, like, yeah, that wasn't my thought. That came from somewhere else.
Hmm.
And so it's not really mystical to a lot of people to think that, man, that the enemy will speak to me. He wants me to trip up. He wants me to make mistakes. He wants me to compromise. But when it then comes to God, we make it much more mystical, even though we wouldn't make it as mystical to the enemy. And to me, it's so simple. Like if my wife were to call me on my phone right now, and it was blocked caller ID, and I answered it, it would take a millisecond for me to know who it is. The reason it would take me a millisecond to know who it is because I've spent significant time and intimacy and years with this person. I don't need her to say, "Hey, Zach, this is your wife, Megan." Like, I know who it is. And likewise, because I've just walked with the Lord for over 30 years now of my life, um, being in the Word of God, being in prayer, learning to discern what's His voice and what's not His voice. It's way easier now than it used to be to know if it's my own weird thoughts from the pizza I ate last night, if it's the enemy's thoughts, or if it's God's thoughts. And I think it's also good to give people some room to experiment with that in a safe place. For example, let's just say a thought comes in your head to call your mom and tell her you love her. Well, the enemy wouldn't tell me to do that. No way. And could that be my thought? Absolutely. I could totally see how that could be my thought. Could that possibly be God speaking to you too? Absolutely. And well, because the enemy doesn't like it, and because it's good, whether it's from me or from God, I'm going to experiment and I'm going to do that thing. The more you experiment and do that thing when you know that it's wise and it's good and the enemy would hate it, the more you practice that, the more you can even discern even your own voice and God's voice. And so that's just a little practicality of how I've over years tried to discern that. Now, to this specific moment, um, a little bit different. This one was really much more overwhelming. This one was much more like, I know without a doubt I would never think this. I would never want to do this. I'd never dreamed about this. I think this is crazy. I think this is silly. This is not my thought. It's like I knew immediately. Uh, but what really hit me was this sense of overwhelming peace. That was the biggest thing. There was like this waterfall of peace that came over me where I don't know, I just knew in that moment that this was it. And so, if people want to credit it to me, if they want to say it's the Lord, I'm not going to argue with anybody or put it up to judgment. I'm just saying for me, as I was making those decisions, it just was really clear to me I was supposed to walk that path.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that for that breakdown, because
Yeah.
that is really helpful.
Hopefully that was helpful. That's just
Yeah,
really how I've
absolutely.
learned it over the years.
And so you just kind of gave a breakdown of how practically, for someone like me to be able to understand, how someone like you could discern, the different voices. So on that kind of theme of practicality, how do you reverse engineer a goal that grand?
Well, that is honestly exactly what I attempted to do. Probably messy, not totally accurate, but that is what I tried to do. It's like, how would I reverse engineer this? And um, you know, nothing's ever going to be perfect. Nothing's ever going to be the most efficient or perfect system by any means. But I would rather try my imperfect, inefficient way of doing something, reverse engineering it, than waiting until I get it perfect and then never take a step. And so as I looked back and tried to reverse engineer it, um, I don't know. Everyone's different, and the way that my mind works, like my mind works in story, my mind works in movies. I'm a very creative type of a person, and so like it's like the whole movie of the story flashed before my head at once. I don't know how else to describe it before, besides like I saw the end from the beginning, and how I would go about it, and so anyway, I saw in the very beginning that I actually shouldn't play any soccer at all because if I did, I would have gotten hurt.
Mm,
You know, so many people, whatever it is, whether it's running or weightlifting or CrossFit, they're like, I'm just going to jump all in. Well, it's good as far as like the willingness, but often that's what makes things short-lived. So I saw the long road view from the beginning and gave myself a long runway with urgency. And so the whole first 3 months, I told myself I'm not going to play a single pickup game at all. I was wildly out of shape. My knees felt like they were 60 years old. I had to get I had to get my body back. I had to rebuild strength from my toes all the way up and bulletproof my ankles, my hips, my knees, my groin, and rebuild stability and strength and power and speed, or else I would hurt myself. Like there was just no question. Like I think I've gotten so many comments on Instagram of like, "Oh, he's gonna hurt himself." I haven't, and I don't. Part of that's luck because injuries can just happen, you know,
right.
freak injuries. But a lot of them are preventable, and I have spent so much time on injury prevention, on building my body. I mean, I'm 37 years old now. I can't mess around with that. So anyway, just reverse engineering it, I kind of broke it down in phases, like the first phase being that rebuilding phase, the second phase just playing as much as I can, failing forward, making mistakes, playing in pickup rec leagues. The third phase was to make it and play on an amateur team, and then the fourth phase was try to play with a professional team somewhere. Which, looking back from day one, that seemed like, how is that going to happen? What's blown my mind is every phase has actually happened up until this point so far. Every single one. Like I would have, if you would have asked me, you know, where do you think I would be right now in 2025? I would have been shocked to know everything that's taken place. I didn't plan for it. Like it's just happened. And so um, a lot still needs to happen on these future phases, but everything that has happened so far I have no other words besides it's a miracle. Like it makes no sense. I don't think I deserve it. I don't think that you know, I've done more than other people have done. Other people are doing social media journeys and it hasn't worked out. Why is mine working out and theirs isn't? I don't know. So I think so much of it is just providence and um, I don't want to speak on things that I don't know, but I think one reason why I think this is just my opinion, why the Lord is blessing my journey is because my motive and my interactions with people along the way, I'm not trying to make it about myself. And that's just genuine. Like I'm sure people would disagree with me. That's okay. Like I respect other people's opinions, but um, I know that this journey isn't about how far I go. It's not about if I make it. This journey is about what happens when you have faith. What happens when you take risks? What happens when you put the comfortable and the safe behind and you walk through the gate and you never turn back? And hopefully can shake people out of status quo to believing like they've never believed before, and specifically believing that God really is who He says He is. That's my biggest heart. If people can see that in my story, then it's beyond the biggest win. And I think because that's front and center in my heart, I think that's why, again, my opinion could be wrong, but I think that's why it's being blessed so much.
Amazing. Yeah, no, I appreciate you sharing that. Um, the phases approach and why you think you're finding success. And I appreciate you also pointing out the fact that other people, you know, have set out on similar paths and maybe aren't getting the outcome, but still deserve, you know, credit for embarking on it and going for it.
Absolutely.
But your insight on why you think uh, your path has come to fruition a little bit more is really, really interesting. Now, going back to how you reverse engineered it. So you talked a little bit about your phases, and in one of your other appearances, I believe it was in the Emulation podcast, you talked about your routine a little bit,
Hmm.
which I believe you've had for several years. Some things, correct me if I'm wrong, but some
Nope,
things I heard were waking up at 4 or 4:30 a.m., morning training, then you get the kids to school. For a time, I'm not sure if this is still the case, working 9 to 5, and then training, family time. That's ridiculous. So how can you balance all of that and maintain energy? And where does
yeah.
that energy come from?
Well, I don't know if this is going to be video or just audio, but I have literally
Oh yeah, we got video.
I have my entire schedule written out. Every hour of my day is accounted for. So just the way that you'd have accounting for money, I have accounting for time. And not only that, I've got a habit tracker that I'm checking daily. And so, um, so much of not just of life, but just of leadership in general is how well can you prioritize your time? And I think that's been one of my secret weapons in this journey is I've really mastered reprioritizing my time and just sticking to that rhythm and routine. And if I can just stick to that every day and win the day and just do what that day requires of me, and you string those wins together, those days together, you can do so much more than you can ever thought possible. And so it's easy when you have a big goal to be overwhelmed of how far away you are for something. But if you make your goal in this reverse engineered way of here's the habits I need to do to reach my goal, here's my weekly rhythms I need to do to reach my goal. If I just stick to this, I'll go so much farther than I thought. And so yeah, that's how I've stuck to it is because I've been intentional. I've written it down. I track it. I have daily rhythms. I have weekly rhythms. I have even monthly rhythms, all right here on my desk next to me that I'm checking in of them daily, weekly, monthly. And then I have it's on quarters as well, 90-day blocks where I can have even bigger objectives for those different quarters. And so I'm trying to engineer that, if that makes sense, the best that I can, while at the same time not focusing on outcomes, but focusing on the process.
Hmm.
And I think that's a big shift. Like so many people live and die by the outcomes, me included. Like I'm guilty of that too. But I tried to refocus my mind on focus on the process and what needs to happen, and then whatever outcomes, whatever happens, happens. Because even if it doesn't go your way and the outcome is not favorable, you'll still have the respect to knowing that you did everything you could, and you just fell short. But I would rather know that I tried everything I could and fall short than look back and think, man, I could have done more. So that's the process over the outcome is huge.
I love that mindset. Process over outcome. You're talking about the controllables, and especially what you said just about, even if you fail, you'll have your own respect, which is just so important.
Yeah.
Talking about those inputs you mentioned, you've talked about scheduling in spontaneity, taking an 18-minute nap while your coffee is on.
Yep.
So
Did
are
that
there
again this
any
morning.
nice, are there any quote unquote boring habits that have made a disproportionately big impact for how simple or easy they are?
It's a good question. Boring habits. I think a lot of those could be looked at as boring. Like I just went on a trip to
Small.
Scotland with my dad, my grandpa, and my brothers, and I found myself getting frustrated because I, without even thinking, I was waking up and I was wanting to do my routine, but because I was on someone else's schedule, someone else's time, they kind of threw it off a little bit.
Mm.
And so just even realizing like how ingrained these habits really have become. So I mean, even as I just look at some of my habits right here in front of me, I mean, probably the most boring one would be like my absolute commitment to go to bed on time. People are like, well, just watch another episode of your favorite show, stay up 30 minutes and scrolling, but I'm like, no, I'm committed to this bedtime because I know if I don't, then I'm not going to be at my best tomorrow. I won't be able to wake up at 4 a.m. I won't be able to, my body, I could even get injured because I didn't get enough sleep, to the a level of intensity of training that I have. And so I think just going to bed on time, is a boring habit that's paid huge dividends. And then even just weighing in every day, just like that. People can easily skip that. We don't have to do it. But I write down, I'll just read you some of my daily habits here. I track what time I go to bed. I track what time I get up. I track how many hours of sleep I get. Probably another boring one, but it's really important just to see how much sleep you're getting. I track, did I hit the snooze button or did I get up on the spot? I track my weight every day. I track, did I do my morning routine that morning? I track, did I do my technical skills for the day? Did I do my speed and conditioning for the day? Did I get my weightlifting session in for the day? Did I stretch today? And then I have a category called Dad Up. Was I present with my kids and my wife today? Was I intentional with them when I was home? And then I have a category called Learn, which is, did I take 10 minutes today to learn something new or to continue learning whatever it is I'm learning? And then my last two are cheat meals and cheat drinks. So those are what I track every day, and those habits have compound interest over time.
Amazing. And so you mentioned a little bit of sleep tracking. Do you use any wearables or anything like that, a Whoop or
I don't. I'm boring. I just set my phone alarm and put it next to my bed. One thing I do, and I used to have really bad insomnia. Like that's a whole other story, but like fearfully bad insomnia. But for the last 3 years, I've gotten the best sleep of my life. One thing I do is I don't wear
Mhm.
AirPods. I wear with this because I just don't like the Bluetooth and the waves around my head, and I feel a difference, and so I only wear the cord. But at night, I'll either listen to podcasts or audiobooks, and that just helps my brain to shut off and just to listen. And so that's been a really, I don't have any wearables or any apps, but I'll listen to podcasts and episodes when I go to sleep. And and then my body alarm, as our bodies were created to be, you go to bed at the same time, wake up at the same time. I don't even need an alarm clock. Like my body gets tired at the same time. If I don't turn my phone on, I'll still wake up at 3:58, and my body's ready to go.
Awesome. Love it. I appreciate you sharing all that. That's very impressive and um, a real sign of commitment to be able to do that
Yeah.
over.
And another thing too is like it's not really impressive that I get up at 4. Like I'm not one of those guys like, hey, you got to get up at 4. I'm like, I've scheduled 8 hours of sleep. Like
Yeah,
some people go to bed at midnight and get up at 8. Like it's the same amount of sleep, but so I don't think that that's really honestly that impressive. That's just how I've scheduled where my 8 hours are for the sleep, and so it's just been helpful to use the time in that way, particularly in my life. I think everybody's season of life is different. Are you single? Are you married with no kids? Do you have kids? Are you an empty nester? So everyone's seasons and patterns will be different. And so I don't think everyone has to get up at 4 a.m. I think, how does it best fit your current life stage right now?
amazing. I'd like to shift a little bit away from the habits back to just the goal itself. So I imagine when you set that goal, you went public with it, you had to deal with some or a lot of judgment from others, maybe thinking you're crazy for going after this. Was there ever a point where that judgment made you question yourself or just was generally really, really challenging to deal with? Obviously, you're still in, the public eye and you've grown more and more, so you have more and more eyes on you. I'm just curious how you've dealt with that or how you think about it.
Yeah, it's an important question, and it's as I look back, it's kind of funny now because when I first started sharing it, no one really cared in the beginning. Like some of the friends I shared it with, and everyone was kind and supportive. But looking back, I'm just like, I think they just thought it was a phase. They didn't really mean it, and I would, a couple months would go by and I'd quit.
Hmm.
So in the beginning, I didn't get any pushback. On social media, I had what 200 followers. No one cared. For the first 4 months, I trained with virtually no audience. To do that for 4 months with zero traction, that's freaking hard. You know, so it wasn't until like things started happening that I started getting opposition and pushback. Before that time, it's like, hey, way to go. This is a, great goal that you got. But then when things started happening, that's when, I'm just like, wow, like this really can ruffle some people's feathers,
Mhm.
of people I didn't expect. And that's okay. I think I struggled with it earlier on than I do now. I think, you know, when it comes to being offended or offense or taking things hard, uh, one great thing is that's totally up to the individual person. So if I want to be upset and if I want to be offended, that's 100% up to me. People can say what they want, they can do what they want, but how I receive it and respond to it, that's my responsibility. So I've made the decision early on that I just wouldn't get offended. And I would realize that I don't know other people's stories. I don't know what they're going through. I don't know their perspective. They see such a limited perspective of my life and my story, and so there can be assumptions on both ends. I don't want to assume about them, even if they're assuming about me. And man, everyone would very much agree that this is a very broken, hard world. And so I try to remember that as much as I can, that everyone's going through crap. Everyone's life has its difficulties. And so if I can respond kindly and be a blessing to other people, even if they don't show it to me, and can just show them a little bit of light in their life, then man, that's worth it. I don't have to have other people agree with me. Now that has been the journey because it has been hard and things have been sharp and things have been biting. But it's also made my skin stronger. I never want to be the type of person who's just like rigid and shut off from emotions. The way I describe it, like I want to have a backbone of steel and a heart of love. And I think it's both. You have to carry both of those. How can I be kind and gentle and loving when I need to be, and then how can I be firm and straightforward and mission centric when I need to be, and knowing when to wear those hats I think is important. And so I think anyone who's trying to do anything will have pushback. It's just part of the process. It's part of the journey. And so one of my favorite quotes is like, if if you shrink back in the day of adversity, then your strength is small. And so every time like I go through these hard times, I just think, man, I don't want my strength to be small. Like, this is the time to keep going. This is the time to not quit. But man, thinking about quitting goes through my mind all the time. And I think anybody who's trying to do anything would say, yeah, they've thought about quitting 100 times. But I just don't, and I'm not going to. And I might fail, but I'm not going to quit.
It's amazing. On that topic of judgment, a little bit more specific to people you encounter in person, maybe some of your teammates at Empire Strikers or TST, or you played in Brazil for a little while. Have you ever faced any criticism or distaste from these teammates? You talked about having a respect for the game when you set this goal, having respect for people that, maybe spent 15, 20 years, and you're not trying to disrespect them. You're just, humbly trying to go for something.
Yeah.
Even still, I imagine some people might, you talked about ruffled feathers. Some people that have been spending a lot of time playing might feel some sort of way. Have you experienced that with any of your teammates?
I think this is one of my favorite parts of my story is in Brazil, um, with TST, with the Hoosier Army, with the Empire Strikers. My favorite parts of all those experiences have been my relationships with my teammates. They've been unbelievable. Um, I can say all of my Empire Strikers teammates love and respect me, and I love and respect them. Like our relationship, we became family. We were brothers. Now, when I first showed up, my very first day, when I didn't have any relationships, yeah, I think certainly people questioned like, who is this guy? Why is he here? Who does he think he is? But the blessing of being with those guys every single day for 150 days of this season, that didn't last long. They saw really quickly who I was. They saw really quickly my motives and my heart. they saw really quickly how well and genuinely I loved them, cared for them, wanted to know them, that those walls fell down so fast. And one person in particular I remember was a little perturbed with me in the beginning, and he ended up being my best friend by the end of the season.
That's amazing.
And
I love
and
to hear.
that's just the best, you know. So anyone that I get significant amount of time with, they know the genuineness of what I'm doing.
And first of all, I'm glad to hear that. And I didn't, I realized that could have come across as maybe a gotcha question. I didn't mean for that.
Oh no, I
Um,
didn't for that.
okay, good. And did you feel like people or teammates were more supportive early on, or were people more supportive as you actually started to get traction and take these steps, amateur team, semi-professional into arena, first division in the U.S.
Are you saying like my Instagram followers in general, just like, or who in
Instagram
particular?
followers, and then maybe separately the people you were playing with? Because I imagine when you first started playing, Sunday league, did your teammates know about your goal, and were they like, what
You
are you
know,
doing?
I never told them. I think they ended up finding out.
Okay.
You know, I never went around like even my family found out what I was doing through Instagram. Like I didn't really tell anybody. I'm just like I'm just gonna go work in the quiet in the dark and go make it happen. But then once Instagram started blowing up, Cat was kind of out of the bag at that
Yeah.
point. Um, but no, I mean even thinking back to my Sunday team. Man, I love those guys. They they welcomed me when I absolutely sucked. I mean, they were all better than me then, and none of them. I don't know what they said behind my back. Who knows? Don't really care to know. But when we were together, we were all super kind and supportive, and I look back on that as one of my fondest memories because they received me at my worst. And that was a huge blessing. And as far as just like followers in general, I don't know. I never started to try to have a big Instagram journey. I started out for the accountability to track the story. I didn't know it would become what it was. But as I've gotten feedback, I mean, thousands and thousands of DMs. Like, right, I feel bad personally because I have so much to get back to in my inbox. I'm like, I wish I could respond to everybody. But the overwhelming sentiment is people are so inspired by the journey. They're so inspired by every new open door that's happening. And so the longer it goes on, the more I'm just like, man, I want to do it for all of them too. Like this isn't my story. Like I just realized like this is for all of us. And that just gives me extra motivation. And then with my teammates, like I mean, TST was such a short time, but even in those 10 days, really bonded with those guys. Incredible players, absolutely phenomenal players on the Hoosier Army. Like I was playing with legends, um, and and I remember even talking with one of the coaches for our team, who's a legendary IU coach, and he just said, I remember as we were walking to one of the games, like, man, what you've done in such a short amount of time, he's just like, it's crazy. It's absolutely crazy. Like it's almost unbelievable. And then my Empire Strikers team, man, so like I can't even begin to say the love I have for those guys. Still talk with a lot of them every week. I mean, we've been out of season for 2 weeks or for 2 months, and so, but even still, I'm talking to a lot of them almost daily, and they are telling me to not quit. They are telling me that it's unbelievable what I'm doing. They are pushing me on to keep going and trying to open up doors for me. And so, those are the things that feel undeserved to me. Like the fact that others are trying to go to bat for me now and to help me and to train me and to open doors for me. That's just a generous blessing I didn't ask for.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting to hear um those individual stories. Can you talk to me a little bit about fear? So on, I believe it was the Yerba Power podcast, you talked about how you felt fear on that first step,
Mm,
and then you felt it on every single step after that.
yeah.
Um, do you think fear is something to be sought out? And then how do you differentiate between legitimate fear that should be obeyed and fear that should be attacked?
Amazing questions. And I'm impressed you've done all your homework on my podcast too. That's great. You know, the only way that fear can be avoided is if you do nothing. And I think a lot of people choose to do that. I don't mean like nothing, but I'm just like, just go with the status quo, go with the norm. Like the moment you step out and try to do anything different or try to, to whatever your dreams are, whatever your goals are, you're going to feel fear. I mean, any prominent author, filmmaker, athlete, businessman, anybody, as they step out in those new, deeper waters, will feel that. And so, if you want to try to scale whatever mountain you're trying to scale, fear is inevitable and it's unavoidable. Um, Now, how do you know if I'm hearing your question right? You're asking, how do you know if this fear you should push through it, or if this fear should be a red flag saying stop? Is that what you're
Correct.
saying?
Correct.
I think that's why it's important to have your mission and purpose very well defined, and your decision making process very well defined. If you have a filter of core values and mission and purpose, and this next step beyond this veil of fear is in alignment with who you are and who you're wanting to be, and it's a blessing to other people, push through it. If it becomes, let's just say there's this fear and now you have to compromise, or you have to do something greedy, or you have to do something under the table to get beyond this fear, shortcuts, that's when I would say, like, hey, major red flag. If your only way to get beyond this obstacle is that, then don't do it. Um, but I think so much of fear is, it's like that example of that invisible wall, right? Like you think there's a wall there, but really the moment it's like another way to look at it is Harry Potter. Like when they're running through at the train station, they run through
Yeah.
that brick wall. Fear is so much like that. Fear wants to intimidate you. It wants to make you think that it's this massive enemy, but when you plow through it, you realize it was just a puff of smoke and such a unformidable foe. And but it keeps trying to, at every new level, you're going to feel it, and so you have to muster courage again to walk through it again, or to run through it again. And so I don't know. I've never felt feeling, right? I've never felt like a courageous person, even now. I feel way more fear than I do courage. But for some reason, I just don't let that stop me. And I think that's what courage is. It's not a feeling of bravery. It's not a feeling of nobility. It's not a feeling of the heroic. It's just being willing to go through the fire, being willing to be refined by the process, and to walk through it. And so I'm willing to do that. I'm not. I wouldn't define myself as someone courageous, but I'm definitely willing to not let fear win in my life.
Right. I like that. Fear or courage is, a decision, not a feeling.
Yeah.
So faith is obviously a big theme in your journey and your life. You mentioned in several of your media appearances, again, in emulation, for example, that you heard the voice of God, again, sitting in that coffee shop in Virginia. Whether it was when you made the decision or when you felt called to leave Anderson, I guess we kind of already asked this. I wanted to ask what that voice sounded like, but you actually already described that. So let me just pivot really quickly. Still
Yeah.
in the journey, would you have been able to take on this journey without faith?
No, not a chance. There's no chance I personally would have been able to take this journey on without faith, mainly because it was the main motivator. Um, I I remember I was either in high school or middle school, and I just wrote this down. I said, I want my life to only be explainable by the power of the Holy Spirit. And so everything in my life I want to point towards the glory of God. And I think in a similar way when David fought Goliath, he didn't fight Goliath thinking I'm the best warrior. I'm the one that should be here. I've spent years in the army. I've gone up the ranks in the military. He was just a shepherd that has never been in a real battle in his life. But the reason he faced it, and the reason is because he saw this giant who was literally blaspheming their God. And so he's like, who is this man to come against my God? I'm going to show the world that my God is who he says he is. And so for me, if this journey was about me, if it was about my success, if it was about my fame, my accolades, I would have burnt out and flamed out so fast. It's such a shallow goal, such a shallow motivation. For me, when I look at 50 years from now again, that's how I'm constantly thinking. What's my wife going to say about the level of faith that I had? What's my kids going to say? Is this going to be foundational in their life to believe against the odds and the impossible, to take God at his word and to trust him no matter what, and to obey no matter the cost? And so for me, that's the basic motivator and decision making filter of everything that I do, is my faith in Jesus. I mean, that's just there's no other way around it. And yeah, so I wouldn't have done it without, like, every morning, part of my morning routine. As I'm praying, like, do you want me to lay this down at any moment? If you want me to stop, I will. And so the way that I think is, I don't want to just do something because I want to do it. I only want to do what he wants me to do. He has complete ownership and possession of my life. Whatever he wants me to do, I'm willing to do it. I'm willing to look like a fool to do it even. And so that's the motive of my heart.
Amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate that. So you just said how, if God says he wants you to stop, you'd stop.
Yeah,
How
without
about
question.
when you ask yourself, obviously you had to believe it in the beginning. Do you still believe now that you're going to achieve this goal? And if so, what keeps that belief alive now?
Yeah, I think going back to what I said earlier, if you would have offered me January 1st, 2023, where I am right now, I would have been like, heck yeah, I'll take it. If that's where I'm at in this journey now, beyond my wildest dreams. And so if I believed then, not knowing what would come, and I would have taken now where I am, that only makes me want to believe all the more. And so I absolutely believe that it's possible. I think that the odds are insane, just like they were, but I think the odds were better than they were January 1st, 2023. And yeah, there obviously will have to be mountains moved and miracles to happen and crazy, crazy things and the crazy things that have already happened. But it's not impossible.
And so you started from zero, to recap. You made it to high level amateur, then Brazil fourth division, I
I,
believe.
I, I honestly don't know because I can't read Portuguese.
I
So, somewhere in the middle.
I tried to search. I think it's around there. And then MASL, which is the highest level of indoor in the US.
Yep.
What's the logical next step?
Well, none of it's logical, but what the preferred next step would be to be on a USL or an MLS team. Even just like get a foot in the door to be on the practice squad would be a major open door. And I had no soccer relationships in the beginning. I have a lot now, like crazy relationships that I wouldn't have dreamed of. That if they wanted to make a phone call to open that door for me, they can. I didn't have that in the beginning. So who knows what'll happen? Um, right now, I'm just in this season of waiting. I think that's part of my journey that people don't see on Instagram, is they think I'm just taking all this massive action, which I am. But most of the time is also just waiting and not forcing something. And I think it takes more faith to wait than it takes faith to move. Um, and I think that's where faith is challenged the most is, can you wait? Can you trust? Or will you go and force something on your own time and your own way? And I've just found out in my life, when I try to force things on my time, my way, they don't go well. So I just don't do that. And so even if I don't know what's next, I'm just going to continue with my habits, my training, trust that the right doors will be opened. And is that hard? Heck yes, freaking hard. That's so hard. But I'm committed to do it.
Amazing. So USL, MLS would be the hopeful next step. So there is a bit of a timeline on this goal, or there is definitely a timeline on this goal.
Yeah.
2026, next summer. If you do or you don't, whatever, the end of the journey comes, would you continue on this path? Let's say it doesn't happen. It doesn't get realized at that point. Would you continue on this path, or is that just something that you have to wait and see?
I would say the short answer to that question is we'll have to wait and see because I don't know.
Right.
Would I want to continue? Yeah, I'm loving this. I'm having fun. Like I would have no reason to stop. Um, I will say a vision that's been continuing to grow in my heart that's so much bigger than my story, my journey. And I can't say the name of it right now of a organization we're starting, but we've gotten massive inroads to really help completely obliterate the pay-to-play system for youth soccer in America.
Mm.
And if my story at the end of the day isn't about me making the World Cup, but it's about giving everyone access and a chance to play and be scouted and be promoted, uh, that would be way better than what I'm doing right now, and be so much more, legacy building and enduring than just my one little life, one little story. I would rather impact and see thousands, tens of thousands of stories better than mine. And so I think ultimately, whether that's sooner or later, um, there's some cool things happening right now where that's becoming a real legitimate reality.
I'd be excited to hear about that because
Yeah.
that's a huge criticism. I've, a critique of mine and of most U.S. soccer fans is
Yeah.
of the pay-to-play system, and a lot of
And
people
and
credit.
and I think from what you're saying, like you feel that everyone feels that. Um, I don't think I'm the solution to that, but the idea and what's being built is, but everybody would want to be the solution to that.
Mhm.
And everybody can do a little bit to help make that happen. And so what we're building is a way for everyone to change the system, and everyone to get involved in that. And yeah, so it's a lot of fun, and we'll see what happens with that. Hopefully it works out, but you never know.
Yeah, I'm excited to see. So I'd like to make a little bit of a shift into some more life philosophy things. Again, I know I've referenced this one podcast a few times now, but on the Emulation podcast, you talked about how felt people are more led by emotions than choices. And I was just wondering if you could elaborate on that.
Yeah, just literally talking about that yesterday with my friend and my wife. Um, Emotions are really good companions, but they're really bad leaders. I don't think emotions should ever be stuffed away. I don't think they should ever not be listened to. They're there for a reason, and they're helpful for a reason, but they're very bad when they're in charge. So I'll just give you an example. I could come home from a really frustrating day, and I could feel like not serving my wife. I could feel like not engaging and talking with her. And that's how I would feel. If I let that be the leader in my life and I don't do that, that wouldn't be good. Or I could feel that way and still choose, I'm going to prefer my wife's needs over my own. I'm going to prefer my children's needs over my own. And I'm going to choose to do what is serving and loving regardless of how I feel. And some people would say, well, that's disingenuous. That's not loving. You don't like, you know what? I think choosing to do something despite how you feel actually is a higher form of will and love than only doing something when you feel like doing it. And people might call that disingenuous. They might put another label on it. I think that's just wisdom. I think if you make those choices over time, you'll actually feel those things more, which I can say in my marriage I do. Like I am way more crazily in love now, 13 years of marriage, than I was just beginning. And I think that's a lot because of the choices that my wife and I have both made toward each other. Because Lord knows she's had many days where she did not feel like loving me because I was probably being a dummy. You know, I can be a blockheaded dummy a lot. And when she chooses to love me when I'm being a dummy, that actually makes me respect her more and care for her more and want to serve her more. And so anyway, that's just one example. And so when we let choices become the leader instead of the emotions, uh, I think that actually makes us dangerous in a good way. Now we're unstoppable. Now I'm not controlled by outside voices. Now I'm not controlled by how you treat me. Now I'm not controlled by, good day, bad day syndrome. Now I'm not controlled by uh, bad circumstances in my life. Again, you will feel all of these, and I intentionally will say, I feel this, and then I often go to prayer. I'm like, hey, God, I feel really ticked off right now. I'm going to give this to you because I'm not going to handle it very well. What choice should I make? And that's just how I've lived my life is like I want to make the best choices regardless of how I feel. And so that's just part of my philosophy. I think that makes us anyone who lives that way a more better, dangerous type of a person.
And is that so? You're touching on some sort of, like decision framework. Do you have a personal philosophy, or would you say your personal philosophy is your faith?
Yeah, I would say the standard for me is the Word of God,
Okay.
100%. Like that is my compass for my value systems, my worldview. Honestly, like just another example, a story, a parable of Jesus. He shared the story how this guy came before this king that owed like $1 billion, and the king forgave him the debt. And then that same guy went and choked out 10 or so other people that owed him like pennies on the dollar. And then he went back to that king. He's like, hey, I showed you so much mercy on this, but yet you strangled them out for pennies. And and so he's like, because you didn't have mercy on them, I will no longer have mercy on you. And so when I think about that, this is just one example of one framework of how this worldview would shape me. When I realize he's speaking about my insurmountable debt of my sin nature, of my life, of every wrong that I've done, he's forgiven all of it, wiped it clean. Who the heck am I to not forgive anyone who wrongs me? How can I hold a single grudge or offense or wrong that's been done to me? And man, that's not theory in my life. That's been tested in my life big time. And so when I think about those stories and those truths I find in the scripture, that really helps shape my decision making. Not have to remember it constantly because I'm a human, right? And I want to get angry and I want to lash out, but when I go back to what do I see as wisdom, what do I see as true, what do I see as asked of me, then I'm failing forward. I don't do it perfectly, but I'm doing my best to live out those truths.
Amazing. Thank you again for sharing that. Like in listening to a lot, in listening to your podcast appearances where you talked about faith, again, as someone, I feel like the circles that I operate in like more urban New England areas, I'm not exposed to religion as much, so it was like novel to me, and it was just raising lots of questions. It was interesting, and was seeing a lot of parallels between like personal development and religion, and I was curious if you saw that. And the reason I'm saying that is because it seemed like in personal development you kind of have like this ideal self that you're trying to live up to, and that seemed like that could be God. And then you talked a little bit about like the Holy Spirit, the voice. And to me, that's like getting in touch with what that reminded me of was getting in touch with your intuition, your gut. So I'm just curious what you thought of that. That's something that came to my mind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of similarities on the surface. I think if you dig deep to the foundation, what you'll find is um, like becoming a better self or I'm sorry, it's not self-help, the term that you use, but like like self-progress. How would you
Personal
just,
development?
thank you. Yeah, personal development. Um, at the end of the day, the center of that story is you.
Mm,
And the center of faith is dying to yourself. So foundationally, they're completely opposed to each other.
okay.
Now, what's interesting is as you die to yourself and you prefer other people and you look more to the Lord, it actually does develop you. It's like it's the cause and effect, but you're not focusing on as much as the personal development. Now, that does that mean I'm not trying to grow? Absolutely. But what is the foundation behind that? Um, like dying isn't fun, and learning to actually die to yourself and self-denial of those things, and letting the Lord be in charge. And so another way to put it is if our lives as a ship, and I'm sailing my own ship, and I'm the captain of my ship, I'm the boss. And essentially, following Jesus is admitting and saying, you know what? I suck at being the boss. I no longer want to be the boss. Can you sail my ship? However you want to develop me, you can develop me. However you want me to lead me, you can lead me, but I'm no longer in charge. And so that I would say on the surface, a lot of the fruit of personal development and faith would be the same, but the foundation would be different.
Interesting. Okay. So more of a sense of giving up control on the faith side, whereas you're trying to take control on the personal development side,
Yep.
and a little bit of the why at the very core is different.
Yep. Yep.
That's interesting. That makes sense. Thank you for entertaining that. I was
Yeah,
just curious.
absolutely. It's a really good question.
Again, this is kind of specific, I guess, to the circles that I grew up in. I feel like a lot of people, and including myself, many times feel turned off by
Hmm.
faith. I grew up, again, I said, in like New England urban areas, and where faith seemed to be kind of siloed into communities that I wasn't really a part of, so I wasn't exposed to it. Um, and I feel like some of the negative feelings that maybe I had at some time or other people's had sometimes related to the language
Hmm.
around that can be surrounded around faith, like having a heart for the lost or calling it being saved when someone converts. I'm not sure if that's the right term, but
Yeah.
um, and to me, that language can sometimes insinuate that those people that are not of your faith or have converted or before their way of thinking, their own personal philosophy was wrong. And I feel like that's where it comes from. And I'm curious because I know you studied missions, and I believe you did one in India, correct?
Yeah. Yeah. I've
I'm
I've been.
sure you've encountered this. I'm just
Yeah.
curious what your thoughts are.
Well, I mean, first, just to, I would say join my boat. Like the people that have hurt me the most have been Christians. The people that sometimes I don't understand the most are people that are quote unquote followers of Jesus, and that makes me sad a lot. So I don't blame you at all for feeling that, but I would say specifically in America, there's more of a spirit of religion, more so than in actually following Jesus. There's a big difference in being in church versus being in Christ. There's a big difference in religion versus relationship. And religion is all about the list of to-dos and the standards to live up to. The relationship is just like, man, I just really, really need Jesus. It's interesting on my Empire team. I have one of my good friends. He's like Zach, I'm gonna get you to sin today. My brother, you're too late. I've already sinned 10 times today, man. Like I need Jesus today as much as I did yesterday. And so it's just a different mentality. But I will say, um, there are definitely things in Scripture that I believe with all of my heart. I mean, I believe all of it, but if I'm really following Jesus and he is who he says he is, and the only way into eternal life and relationship with the Father is through him, then how can I not view anything outside of his love as someone that, man, I want them to know how good and how great and how real and how personable Jesus is. It's not from this better or versus us versus them. The unfortunate thing, as you just noted, I think a lot of Christians do think that. Like, I've been saved, so I'm better. They're heathens. And I'm just like, man, we're all God's children, and he's on this great rescue mission to bring him back to the Father because he loves us. He loves every single one of us. And so every single person I talk to, I just want them to encounter the radical love of Jesus. And if I can be that representative to them of how good he is, how real he is, how historical his death, burial, and resurrection is, and that would change their life, why would I not want them for that person, for anybody, for myself? And, I've traveled to 42 different countries now, and seeing people of every religious background come to faith. I don't think it's about converting. Um, Man can convert someone. Only the Lord can change a heart. Only he can take someone from believing one thing and believing another. So I'm never trying to get people to change their minds. What I do like to do is help introduce people to Jesus. But the decision's always going to be on that person. But I'll tell you one specific story. I can't share details because it would be it's a sensitive country. Like, this person literally, these people are trying to kill him. But I'll just say this, I was in the Middle East, South Asia area, in that region of the world, and I was sitting with one of the former right-hand men of Osama bin Laden. And he used to be in Al Qaeda. He used to be one of the top guys in the Taliban. He would recruit people to jihad, and he was the guy that would train them how to shoot like rocket launchers. And long story short, he had a dream one night of Jesus. And in that dream, the dream was so powerful as he encountered Jesus that he came to faith. And he immediately, the Taliban, his own friends, tried to kill him. They split his head open with an axe. He survived it. And so I'm sitting in the room with this guy, and he's sharing his story. And I'm like, I won't say his name, but I'm like, hey, aren't you afraid every single day of your life because people are trying to kill you? And he thought about it for a second, and he said, Zach, I wasn't afraid to die for the wrong cause. I'm definitely not afraid to die for the true cause. Jesus came to give life, and everything I was doing was to come to bring death. And he's like, I'm giving my life to this. And so I've seen people from every spectrum, from the tribes of the Amazon to the Middle East to South Asia, and what I've seen, if people want truth more than they want their own opinion, their own way, they just end up finding Jesus. And so I don't know if that answers your question or not. I think there's a lot of problems with religion. I think there's a lot of problems with the system of religion in America. I think we've gone too far away from actually having a relationship with Jesus and helping people be introduced to him. And I think there needs to be a lot of reform in that to bring it back to the very simple love and obedience of Jesus.
Interesting. Well, thank you again for sharing that, for entertaining my many questions on faith, but I really do appreciate it. I'd actually like to take it back a little bit outside of faith.
Yeah.
Just a couple. I have some straggling questions now.
I love it.
You said, going back to kind of football and how it ties in your early football career and how it ties into your soccer journey now, you said football punishes mistakes while soccer encourages creativity. Can you unpack that a little bit? Because I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, and that's not from like a coaching perspective. That's from in football. If you have a turnover, that's one of the biggest categories of like who's going to lose the game, who has the most turnovers. And in soccer, there's a lot more frequent turnovers. Like if you turn the ball over, just go get it back. Immediately press. It's not like that in football. Like the mistakes you make shift games entirely, and almost always. And so you're sticking to the game plan. You're sticking to the routes you have to run. You're sticking to your blocking assignments if you're the lineman. Your quarterback, you're making your very specific reads. If you mess those things up, you're either turning the ball over, you're punting it, and those swings have massive effects on games. And soccer, it's much more creative and flowing. And yes, you can make mistakes, but you can also get the ball back. And one missed pass won't define the game most of the time. And so that's what I noticed. And more particularly when football is most like soccer is when football has what's called a broken play. And so like as a receiver, if I'm running my route and I see that my my quarterback is being chased by a defender, and all of a sudden he's going the wrong way. All the routes are going this way, he's going this way. I can't just stay in my route. I have to now, it's a creative moment. I have to find the space. I have to get open. I have to get where he can see me. And it doesn't matter where I go. I just need to get to that spot. That's when I think football is most like soccer, because that's the spontaneity, that's the creativity. But by and large, it's a very structured game where mistakes are extremely costly and points are extremely rewarding. In soccer, obviously points are extremely rewarding, changes the momentum of the game, but the general gameplay is just much more free flowing, creative, and they even teach you to not be afraid to make mistakes and to go for it. That is not taught in football at all. I never heard that until I started playing soccer. I'm like, it's unfathomable to think be free to make mistakes in football. Like that, no coach will ever utter that.
No, that's awesome. And I bet a lot of that has to do with, like you said, football's a little bit more rigid, start, stop. If you lose the ball, like it's defense, then offense.
Yep.
There's stops in between. And soccer is much, much more fluid. One's not better than the other. I think that I've always been really impressed by how tactical and how much coaching plays a role in American football. That's interesting to hear your insight.
Yeah.
Let me just do one more scroll through here. I think we've covered a lot of it. Yeah, is there anything else that you want to touch on?
No, you've asked some amazing questions, and I don't know when in this journey people will get to see more of the behind the scenes of my life, or people don't get to see my life in its entirety, the context behind my decisions, why I am the way I am. Only very few know that and get to see that. I just wonder, on my journey, is that something that's ever going to be seen more or known more? I don't even know if I have the freedom to really share or go into some of those things a lot, but knowing me and my life, my journey, my story actually makes what I'm doing now, puts it in a context where you would actually think, oh, I'm actually not surprised he's doing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's another reason why I don't blame anybody for thinking whatever adjective you want on my story, because I know they don't know my history. They don't know, I'm 37. They don't know what all those years have been filled with, all the trials and struggles and successes and risks. And so maybe that'll get shared one day. Maybe it won't. Maybe it'll be in a book because it's too much to share just on, one podcast. But that makes me just think like the best thing that we can do with anybody is get to know their stories. Because if not, there's so much we can assume about everyone. And the more questions we ask instead of assumptions we make, the more it actually brings us together and provides opportunity for better relationships to happen. I think that's been the secret sauce of this journey, is just building good relationships.
I love it. That's actually a common theme that's come up in a lot of my interviews, and it reminds me of this quote. I think I've brought it up in every single interview from Ted Lasso,
Yes.
the be curious, not judgmental, which I absolutely love, and what you just said really, really reminds me of it. So thank you for sharing that. And I just wanted to say, like how much I admire your courage to go for something so big, so publicly, and I think your progress so far is just a really a shining example of aim for the moon, land amongst the stars. Like it's really awesome, and I'm sure you might actually land on the moon, but for now, just really impressive, and I'm so happy to get to sit down with you, and really thankful that you were so up about your life, your journey in soccer, and your faith. It was really interesting to hear. So thank you.
Well, thank you for taking the time and asking such amazing questions.
Yeah, of course, anytime.